Hello, this is cjhoyle. Today is Saturday, March the 4th, 2023, and today I'm standing here on Moore Avenue, just south of the Mount Pleasant Cemetery here in the city of Toronto. Back behind me you can see a bunch of white stuff, as well as my cross-country skis, because in this video I'm going to be cross-country skiing down the Moore Park Ravine, and then back up the Vale of Avoca Ravine. So my adventure begins here on the Moore Beltline trail as I begin descending down into the valley. And there's a fair bit of a nice hill to start things off, although this hill actually used to be a fair bit steeper than this. They recently added this switchback here. The trail was closed for quite a few months. I believe it opened again in November. A little bit hard to make that corner on an ungroomed amount of snow there with cross-country skis on. But yeah, I believe the trail reopened in November, approximately last year in 2022. You can see there's lots of snow and in the trees. That's because a lot of the snow you can see just came within the last 12 hours or so. It started around 6 or 7 o'clock last night, and it was kind of like a blizzard. It was floating through the air. Let me just tilt the camera up a little bit so you can see. And as the wind blows, there's now big clumps of that snow falling down. So this is the Moore Beltline Trail. This used to carry a railway back in the 1890s called the Beltline Railway. It only ran for about 2 years before it closed down. It was unsuccessful. Hello. This bridge that we're passing under here is called the Cat's Eye Bridge. It's a pedestrian type of bridge. It just connects together a residential street called Heath Street through the neighborhood which surrounds this valley, which is called Moore Park. Really nice day to be out doing this. This is actually the first time that I've used my cross-country skis this year, believe it or not. And you know, when the calendar rolled around to March, I was starting to think that, I guess I'm not going to get to go skiing this year. But then we got the snow that I, said came overnight last night, as well as we had a little bit of snow before then. So there was already a little bit of a base layer for this stuff to sit on top of, which I decided was enough snow for me to use my cross-country skis. I'm always a little bit hesitant to take them out, under circumstances when there's, not quite enough snow, because that can really damage your skis if you end up, going over rocks and concrete and things like that. In the last couple of years, I've really gravitated towards urban cross-country skiing, which is skiing through city parks and trails within Toronto, where I live. People who are maybe a little bit more enthusiastic about cross-country skiing will spend their weekends driving to places with more snow so they can get skiing, but I like to do it here in the city. So this valley here was carved out by a stream of water that's now called the Mud Creek, which flows down through this valley. Look at that tree there, must have just fallen down pretty recently. There was quite a bit of wind last night. Just double check and make sure We're still recording, and we are. When I tried recording this video when I started, after about a minute or so, the camera shut off and said low battery, and I checked it and it said 92% battery, which is pretty frustrating. But I'm glad to see that it's working so far. But I guess if the video ends earlier than expected, that's the reason for that. So yeah, this valley is where the Mud Creek flows through. You can kind of actually see a little bit over there to my right, just sort of peeking through in the very bottom of the valley. So I'm going to be working my way down to the Don Valley at a location called the Brickworks, which is the site of the old Don Valley Brickworks, which manufactured a lot of bricks that you'll see around the city, a lot of older buildings. But that, of course, shut down a long time ago, and it's now used as sort of a community space type of place. Right here, we're about to go underneath of another bridge. This one carries the Canadian Pacific Railway, or CP Rail, that goes across the middle of the city here. Looks like another down tree up ahead with a bit of a detour here around it. I've got some work to do before people can ride their bikes down this trail. I mean, I guess obviously on a bike you could do these detours just as easily as I am here with my skis, but they will clear the trail to make it back the way that it was before, I'm sure. So once you get to the Brickworks, then we'll actually be heading up another valley, one that was carved out by the Yellow Creek. And that ravine is called the Vale of Avoca. And I actually made a video about a year and a half ago where I rode my bicycle down this same route. So if you're interested in seeing what this looks like in the month of June, where as opposed to seeing white everywhere you look, you would have seen green everywhere you looked, well, I'll provide a link to that video for those of you interested. We just passed another bridge back there. I didn't point it out, but that one's a road bridge. That one carries Governor's Road, which is just a neighborhood street which connects one neighborhood to another. Now that bridge over there to the left will take me down into the Brickworks site. There are a number of different options of getting from the Beltline down into the Brickworks from here, but that's the first one, the first option. That one kind of goes through kind of like a boardwalk through a marsh. So this, of course, is not an actual cross-country skiing trail. It's just a normal trail, but you can see where I'm skiing right now is a place where a lot of people have already walked down, so it's quite smooth and straight. It's almost like a groomed track. There's another cross-country skier coming in the other direction. I'm not the only one out. Hello. But yeah, this trail is used by many different users, and it's pretty suitable for skiing on when there's enough snow for it. I have skied this particular route quite a few times in past winters, and believe it or not, this is actually my third attempt at filming a video along here. The first two were 2 years ago in 2021, and I just had technical difficulties with those videos not turning out. I think one of them I had the camera so that it Right after I started, it kind of drooped down and it was like facing down at my feet and you couldn't really see very much. And I thought, well, this is not going to make for a very good video if all you see is my skis in the snow. But here I am, third time's the charm hopefully, although like I was saying at the beginning with my camera just shutting off with 92% battery, that wasn't a great start, but so far so good, I guess. Back there on the right, we just passed another switchback into this trail. That one's called the GoPro Park switchback because it connects up with a park at the top of the valley called GoPro Park. It's a park in the Rosehill neighborhood. And it actually, before it was a city park, it was actually the site of a large mansion where the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario lived. So they used to have this big mansion that if you were appointed to that position, you got to live there. But in the 1930s, they did away with that, and I think the building was used for government purposes, for government offices for a period after that, but the house was eventually torn down and now it's just a park. Interesting noise that the trees are making with the snow in them. So this route that I'm skiing is about 5 kilometers, which is a pretty good length to ski down. And so it starts from just south of the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and the place where I'm going to get off and finish my ski is right near, pretty close to Yonge and St. Clair, like maybe 2 or 3 blocks to the west of that intersection. And that's pretty handy for someone like me that likes to do this urban cross-country skiing, because I can take the subway and I can get off at one of the subway stops and get back on another subway stop. I actually started my day of skiing at Davisville station, and I skied along the very last little part of the K Gardner Beltline trail, which goes west from Yonge Street all the way to Mount Pleasant, and then it terminates there. Then I took my skis off and I walked through the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and then I put them back on again, and that's where we started the video, just south of Moore Avenue. And it seems like this part of the trail has been walked on less, so there's not the same narrow little heavily packed place to ski on where people had walked. People had walked a little bit more spread out here. Perhaps the snow is just not as deep here, so people didn't feel the need to stay in the same tracks this morning. More cross-country skiers. I'm going to join their tracks that they're making for me. Yeah, the snow here is kind of more like slush. The snow was very wet last night, very heavy. I was expecting it would be pretty slow for skiing on, and I guess it is. I guess it is fairly slow snow for skiing on, but it's also the only snow I've skied on this winter, so I'm not complaining. I'm really glad that I got to squeeze this in. And who knows what the next couple of days hold. Right now it's above freezing, like it's maybe 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. So, you know, it's supposed to be a fairly sunny day today, I think. So I think that will erode some of these conditions. It'll, you know, melt away some of the snow, or at least make it more icy. But perhaps in the next couple of days there'll be more snow. I haven't really looked at the long-term forecast. That road that's over there to our left is Bayview Avenue, which runs along the bottom of this valley at this point. And so yeah, here, you know, like I said, we were following the Mud Creek that flows down through this valley, but I think we've pretty well reached the bottom of where the Mud Creek goes, and it joins into the Don River somewhere around here. But now we're going to be, again, climbing up that other valley, which is the path cut by the Yellow Creek. So everything I've seen so far has been on average downhill, and now the opposite will be true as I make my way up the next valley. And straight ahead you can see there's a sign for the Don Valley Parkway. This is one of the entrances from Bayview Avenue onto the DVP. But we're not going to be skiing on the highway. They're very different conditions down here. The snow is seems to be much shallower and more icy. I was kind of worried that, you know, in the forest there wouldn't be a lot of snow because of the way the snow was falling last night. It was kind of horizontal, like a blizzard. So I thought a lot of it would get trapped in the trees, which it did, but still there was plenty of snow on the ground too. But now there's even more snow on the ground as that snow falls from the trees from those gusts of wind. Now we do have another little slight downhill here, but it's pretty short-lived, and then the gradual uphill begins. And from here, this part of the trail is obviously not part of the Beltline trail, or well, yeah, it's not part of the Beltline trail, but it's also not part of the former path of the Beltline railway either. So if I was to go to the left there, that trail goes a fairly steep ramp up into the Rosedale neighborhood, but I'm going to continue going straight here, and this trail or park or whatever it is, it's called the Park Drive Reservation Lands. And it gradually makes its way over towards Mount Pleasant. Straight ahead there you can see the Yellow Creek, which is very straight, but of course it's not naturally like that. The Mud Creek and the Yellow Creek are two examples of natural waterways in the city of Toronto that they had manufactured into man-made waterways. They made them, as opposed to being a zigzaggy route that goes down and occupies an entire valley. They straightened it out, and in a lot of cases they buried those rivers. There's quite a few examples like that across the city, which is why you don't really see a lot of, exposed water flowing down anywhere, within the downtown area of the city.
Yeah. Give me a bubble myself.
Great to see lots of people out enjoying this nice, mild, snowy day. And straight ahead there's another bridge that we're going to go under, one that's quite high up. That's for Glen Road, which is a bridge that connects together two separate portions of the Rosedale neighborhood. Rosedale is a kind of a luxury homes neighborhood that's quite old. That's located towards the kind of the north and a little bit west of the main downtown of the city. A lot of old giant houses. And it's sort of subdivided into two different sections, with this valley that we're in right now being the subdivider between those two, and that therefore makes the Glen Road Bridge the connecting point between the north and south portions of Rosedale. So far this hill is not very steep. It's quite gradual to climb, although I know at the very end of this, when we get closer to the Rosehill Reservoir, where we'll wrap things up at David Balfour Park, there's quite a steep hill there that I'm sure I'll be doing a lot of huffing and puffing. But for the meantime, we've got a pretty easy hill to climb here. So I've made a handful of these urban cross-country skiing videos over the last couple of years. As I make these videos, I kind of draw on my experience making narrated bike riding videos, which are virtually of the same style, but done on a bicycle. I have dozens of those videos that I've made over the years, showing lots of different parts of my city, as well as I bring the camera with me when I travel to other cities too. Oh yeah, it's fairly rare that I get to go cross-country skiing in my city. Like I said earlier, I am kind of picky about the amount of snow that there is before I decide that I'm going to go skiing on these trails, but it usually only amounts to about 5 or 6 days per year where the conditions are suitable for this sort of thing. But normally I am out, every one of those days, enjoying it. Last year I did the Tommy Thompson Park, or the Leslie Street Spit, on skis for the first time and shared that as a video. That was a pretty fun experience. It's a very flat place to ski, but also very sort of unique and secluded. And I went on a day when it wasn't, it's never not windy at that park, but it was less windy than usual. Made for good conditions. So yeah, it seems like this portion of the trail has been compacted and walked on similar amount to the Moore Beltline trail where I started. So I think it's probably the same amount of compaction everywhere, the same amount of walking. It's just that the snow down in the bottom of the valley was wetter and thinner, so it seemed less packed. Now the hill is starting to become more steep. The last video that I posted to my YouTube channel was a narrated ice skating video where I was in the city of Peterborough with my skates, and I skated from one end of their local skating infrastructure to the other, which is a portion of the Trent Severn Waterway. It goes from lock number 20, Ashburnham, to lock number 21, which is the Peterborough Lift Lock. That was kind of a nice and neat place to go skating for me, because I have actually canoed the whole, well, not the whole, I've canoed certainly that portion of the Trent Severn Waterway. I was gonna say I've canoed the entire Trent Severn Waterway, but that's not quite true. I have canoed through, or at least in the vicinity of every one of the locks on the system, but I haven't canoed across the 3 large lakes that are part of that system, the Lake Simcoe, Lake Couchiching, and Rice Lake. Alright, so we're just about at Mount Pleasant Road, and we'll have to cross that road so we can continue skiing on the other side, and that's where things start to get steep again for my skiing. Thankfully there's a nice crosswalk to get across Mount Pleasant, which is a pretty busy road. That crosswalk is relatively recent. And actually that video I made in 2021 was before that was finished. Okay, let's get my skis off quickly so I can cross. All right, there we go. Just got lucky there with the timing of that light. I think it would have been a long wait if I had missed that light phase there. Let me just get my skis back on. All right, so here we continue. And this, like I said, the last part was called the Park Drive Reservation Lands. This part is called the Vale of Avoca. But they're both the same valley. They're both where the Yellow Creek flows, and I think right here actually the Yellow Creek is underground. There's no bridge when you go across Mount Pleasant, so I think it's probably buried inside of a big piece of pipe. As it is further down from where we last saw it. And both the Yellow Creek and the Mud Creek empty into the Don River, which I've kayaked up before. I made a video kayaking up the Don River in 2021, and I did it again in 2022, just without the camera, just as an adventure for me. It was really just a repeat of what I'd done before, so no reason to make a video. See another cross-country skier up ahead. Now I can distinctly remember coming skiing here one winter. I think it was like kind of it was in the evening, I remember that for sure. And it was, I think, pretty early into when the snow had fallen, so there weren't really any, you know, very clear laid out tracks quite yet. I remember taking a couple of wrong turns and ending up on the wrong side of the creek, getting lost and taking a lot longer than it should have. Okay, I'm gonna take my skis off to get over this. All right, so there we can continue. I just like to try and protect the bottoms of my skis as best as possible and not get them all scratched up. Although it's pretty hard with all these trees that have fallen down here. Should be able to get around this one though. If you went to a cross-country skiing resort, you probably wouldn't have to contend with too many things like that. So up ahead in the distance, there's another bridge that we're going to go under. That one, once again, carries the CP rail, the Canadian Pacific, the same railway that we went under right at the very beginning of the video. Now over there to my left, I can see some people walking on the other side of the creek, and there are trails on both sides. Oh, the train coming across that bridge. There are trails on both sides of this valley, or both sides of the river at least, but this one over here on this side is definitely better worn. It's a wider trail that parts of it are actually paved, where the other one is a little bit rougher and not as flat. It's kind of on the side of the valley at times. Although we are going to cross to the other side eventually. There's a bridge to get us across. That person ahead of me is walking with snowshoes. Maybe that's who I can give credit to for these little well compacted places to ski on. Certainly a busy place here. When I've skied this in the evenings, I've done it with a headlamp so I can still see what I'm doing. There's definitely fewer people out using the trail after dark. When the snow was coming down last night, there was something that I've never seen before, at least not that I can remember, and that is, it was a blizzard outside. There was snow falling, and there was lots of wind, like often happens, you know, when there's a snowstorm with a blizzard. But what I'd never seen before is that, along with all that, there was also thunder and lightning. Thunder snow, they were calling it. Which apparently does happen from time to time, and perhaps when it's happened before, I've kind of thought of it more as, you know, like rain in the winter, like very wet snow, but this was actual, you know, actual snow that was falling where that, well, that thunder and lightning was coming down. All right, there's our little bridge that we'll cross to get to the other side, crossing over the Yellow Creek. And now, here's where the real climbing begins. You can see that that's a very man-made creek with, you know, little stone walls on either side to keep it from eroding the banks and allow it to go in a straight line. Looks like we got a little snowman that someone's made over there on the right up ahead. I guess the conditions are right for that. The snow's, you know, fairly wet, it's fairly warm, so makes for some packing snow. All right, I'm going to try and sidestep across this log here to get across. That's something that you can do when the log is straight without a whole bunch of branches coming off of it. Morning. And here begins the hill climbing. I know this portion of the trail is paved, where a lot of other parts of it are just mud, or not mud, but fine crushed gravel like limestone. Although they are, you know, when it's wet, you do get a little bit muddy coming down here. And of course, I'm talking about when you're riding a bike. You don't usually get muddy when you go cross-country skiing. Here, so you can see a lot of the snow that's fallen and landed in all the trees, along with the Yellow Creek in the background. I don't know why they call it the Yellow Creek. It's a name like that seems to imply that it's going to be pretty gross and polluted, but the water seems relatively clear. As clear as any other Toronto waterway. Mud Creek also isn't really the most positive name that you could think of for a creek. But same thing, it's, you know, it seems relatively clean and not too murky at this point in time. I know that in the, you know, the long history of Toronto that involved burying those creeks did have times when the creeks and the, you know, the streams and the waterways and everything were kind of used more like sewers, that people would dump their waste down them. So perhaps that's what the names were. That's what the origin of those names were, from that period in time. Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying this ski. Definitely glad that I got everything prepared and came out here today. Who knows if I'll have a chance to get out again. Maybe I'll go skiing again later in the day. Maybe I'll go another day too. We'll have to wait and see what the weather does. So we're just about out the end of this now. And so to our left is a park known as David Balfour Park, which below it sits the Rosehill Reservoir, a big, large underground tank of water that, as I understand it, kind of serves like a water tower, serving the water further, you know, serving all the buildings and services further down the hill from here in the downtown core. But as you can see here, we've reached the end of the trail. From here I'll take my skis off and I'll walk over to the St. Clair subway station and I'll head my way back home. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed joining me on this cross-country skiing adventure here today. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And thanks for watching.